All right. Welcome back to another episode, guys. We're excited to be here. I'm joined today by a special guest. You might have seen him on the last episode, um, David Keller. He's a special education teacher. And today we really just want to get into special education in and of itself and kind of focus on that. So I'm glad that you're able to be with me today. And to start things out, I really just want to hear from you what it's like, just a day in a life for a special ed teacher, because it's definitely different from a neurotypical classroom setting.
So I'm a first year teacher, so I got to be honest, I don't properly know how to answer that question.
Uh,
Just because what my year looks like this year is very different. My day looks like this year is very different to other days. Um, so I remember my time as a para. It's a lot of paperwork from watching my teachers on like a quote unquote regular year.
yeah.
I worked with Michelle Haps, Julian St. John, and Mary Harvell over at Rustburg Middle School. My first years as a para. Um, it's and so I learned a lot from them. There's a lot of meetings, a lot of stuff like that, which is a lot of the boring stuff. But now that I'm in it, I guess my day, which is I also laugh because it depends upon it during COVID. I guess I'll walk through my week about all the stuff that I do. Um, so Mondays and Wednesdays are my hell days.
Hmm.
It depending upon what service that they provide, I might not get a lunch. Um, So Monday, first period is planning, but that's kind of been turned into a study skills class. I got a student throughout the year that we had to find a classroom to put them in, and then they ended up being coming on my caseload throughout that. So I work with that student with some more lifestyle and stuff to get them ready to graduate. But if he isn't there that day, then I plan. And for planning, what that is I'm either looking up students' grades for consultation services. I am sending emails out, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like this morning I sat down because I had limited time. I fired off, I think it was like four emails before, like I got in at 7:30 and I sent off four emails before 7:35
Hmm.
because I had to run to cover a class for somebody who has had an IEP meeting. So first period's just a lot of like that's like my most productive period of the day, even though it's planning because I struggle to regulate myself. So I have my list and I'm very good at getting my list done and sending all my emails. That's like my first thing in the morning. I get all my emails answered. Um, Plan out my day. Second period, Monday, Wednesday, I go co-teach a sixth grade class. That just changed a bit because of classroom sizes. So
Hmm.
now we are today was like my first day. Like I found this out yesterday. So Dom's gonna laugh at this. I was studying to be music ed for a while. Like we had class together in college. Um, and I teach math now. And I'm currently getting my license for that. Like I take my class to learn how to teach math. It started Monday, and I've been
Uh,
doing this for like 6 months. And I just because of classroom sizes, I'm now teaching a section of that technically by myself. So it's we're me and Miss Megan Robertson. We switch halfway through so we can cover it. Because our classrooms we share a door, so we can kind of do that without going in the hallway.
hmm.
Um, so I taught sixth grade math today, which was fun. I got to use some Minecraft things.
That's
Third
what's
and
up.
fourth, third and fourth period is seventh grade math. I provide some services in there. We have VIP lunch in between that. During that time, I either just kind of during lunch, I try to keep myself busy, but every once in a while, if it's like it's been a long day, I'll just like sit, enjoy my lunch, or I'll go help my co-teacher out during her lunch. And then fifth period, I have eighth grade math. And some providing service in there. Tuesday, Thursday used to be my like easy day where I was just mostly doing paperwork. But I requested some students to come on Tuesdays and Thursdays for an additional day because Campbell County is doing 2 days in person, 3 days virtual. But we've provided it not just to students receiving services to everyone in the county. If we feel a need to ask for a third day to come, they can.
Hmm.
But if a student's on my caseload, they mostly fall under my responsibility. And I also added a remedial math class because there were some kids that were struggling. So Tuesday, Thursday, I'm teaching remedial math first period. Second and third, I'm working with a student one on one on an alternate day that they attend. Uh, Lunch and VIP. I am writing IEPs at least right now because it's just springtime, which is IEP season. So that's fun time. Fourth period, I provide services. Fifth period, my students come back. and I got a new set coming in tomorrow. Fridays, 7:30 to 11:30. I have a student that I requested to come in an extra day. That's our teacher work day.
Hmm.
Most counties are doing 4 days of school, 1 day off, so teachers can get all caught up. So that Friday, I have a virtual student that comes in, and I get to assist them on some stuff, and then the afternoon is spent either. Um, oh, and I forgot, Thursdays are my PLC days, so I go talk to my co-teachers, like so we know what we're doing the next week, have stuff planned out. Um, some of them don't have their lessons posted yet until I give them a second look, because right now a lot of our general education teachers, they're very prepared and like they're ahead of some stuff, but they had to like change their content from being like all in person to being virtual, so making a lot of presentations, powerpoints, and videos. I think it's beneficial for them having co-teachers because I can give it a second look, which at times, which I planned for that on Wednesday. So I'm going to do that tonight after this podcast because I didn't get a chance to get to it today.
Hmm.
Um, so basically, what I'll do is like last week we had a presentation that we gave today on tips and percentages and stuff like that. So I looked for it and I went, hey, what if we like broke it down like that? So that's what we do for PLC, which is like PLC stands for something. I don't know. At this point, I'm afraid to ask because I've been there too long. I should know, but I know it's planning, and I'm working with a co-teacher. Like, so we go in there together. And Fridays, sometimes I have a mentor meeting. This Friday, I have a SPED meeting. We're going to plan out our meetings for the rest of the semester. So it's kind of nonstop.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I can find it is. I will say it is a challenge to keep myself busy because I'm very good. I struggle to find work to do, but I'm also very good to like when I'm on it, I'll work faster than I'm used to.
Yeah.
So sometimes tasks that like I think will take like 30 minutes can take like 10 on a good day.
Hmm.
And then I'll like overdo my day. It's like not because I didn't have a lot to do. Like I'm running my first IEPs. My first one took me like 4 days to do, like nonstop. And now I'm like, I don't want to say I feel cocky about it or like or arrogant, but it's like now, oh, if I sat down in like 4 hours, I can get one done.
Yeah. I mean, if you know what you're doing,
Um,
you know what you're doing. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I don't know what I'm doing quite yet, but I'm starting to. There's a
getting there.
difference. So it's one of those, because I'm not always necessarily with like a bunch of kids, or at least this year, even though I am co-teaching, if there's no students receiving services in the class, I don't have to go. So that's why like my schedule stays the same. Like second period is sixth grade math every day, but there's no kids in our classroom at all on Tuesdays, so I don't go. So I keep working.
Mm.
So I know that's an additional planning period. So I use that time to kind of like make some phone calls, reach out, really take advantage of the time to actually write some IPs to kind of avoid taking as much work as home as possible. So like it's working as hard as my gen ed teachers, I feel like, but it's like it's doing it in different ways. So while they're working on making materials for kids and always looking forward to the next few weeks, I feel more like in the moment, and I feel like I'm reacting at times while
Mm.
they're planning for the future. So it's been very interesting because I don't know how it's gonna be next year. Because I asked people what's gonna be like next year, they tell me they didn't know.
Yeah.
I tell people what's like the difference between this year and last year, and they say like I don't know, just nothing feels the same. So like it's interesting as a first year teacher trying to get a routine and knowing once August comes, I'm just gonna have to learn a whole new thing all over again.
Yeah. And you said something that kind of reminded me of my days as a mental health professional in elementary school, to where we kind of react and have to be in the moment. And you said that you provide services during a lot of periods. Can you kind of expound on that? I think I have a general idea of what it means, but just for everyone viewing, what do you mean exactly when you say provide services for your
So
students?
services is kind of it's a I think it's an it might just be a term I use in my building. I think I've heard some other people say that. So that could just be an Alta Vista or Campbell County thing, but providing services to me is uh I just blanked. I want to do for a living. Um, so what I do is for coach, I co-teach math with people. So what that means is that there's some students that I believe they're taking the Woodcock Johnson. I haven't provided one yet, so I can't remember the test name, so I'm sorry. And they scored at a certain level or have a certain difficulty, and so we've determined that they need some help with math. So what I do when I say I provide services is I will go in there. Oftentimes the sped teachers will differentiate or kind of like be able to give one-on-one. Differentiate is just teaching it, excuse me, a different way.
Mm,
So like, for example, we are using, we're moving, like we'll have like 5x equals 20. And um, my one teacher would say like, all right, so we have a 5x over here. We have to move it over here. How are we going to move it over there? Um, we know we move because it's multiplying. So when we see that, like whenever we want to move it, we divide. And so let's do that. And then like my way is like, hey, so what's the opposite of multiplication? Well, opposite of multiplication is division. So when I want to get something over there, always use the opposite. We just said the same thing. And if one of those sounded more preferable to you than the other, it's not that one of us is better. It's just that like I'm able to provide a different approach. I also become, I guess, an expert on different teaching styles. So in that planning time, we we will sit there like this past week. Again, we did percentages today. So like the x over 100 equals is over of that whole thing. Like
mm,
I suggested, what if we just took 2 slides to teach how to plug stuff in? Because like our kids struggled with that. And then my co-teacher went, oh yeah, we do struggle with that. So it's one of those, I kind of, at sometimes like I'm not the one making the content. I'm also not the one like critiquing it and saying like we should do this and that, because it's a mutual partnership. There's just a couple different ways that I do provide services. So it's kind of a broad spectrum, but the way a lot of parents see it is just I'm going in the classroom, I'm working with the kid. I'll pull them individually to kind of work them through some stuff if I have to.
mm,
If I have to do for longer stuff, I will read aloud tests and quizzes if they have a read aloud or audio accommodation. I make sure that if they have an accommodation, it's up to me to make sure they're doing it. Seating charts are a big one because if a kid has preferential seating near the teacher, and the teacher makes a chart like I want to put this kid here to challenge him, I really have to go like the IEP says blank. So
yeah.
basically, my job at times, I guess I'm trying to find the best way to say this is like I care about the IEP at times more than I do about like the core content,
Mm,
and that's my main focus. While the teacher's main focus is upholding the SOLs, keeping all that stuff accountable. So we have like different roles because there's so many people in the room at times. Or this year we'll have like 8 one day, 6 the next, and then 15 online.
mm,
So like it's also just takes some load off their back. It's very much a support role at times, where I'm just there to help them do a million things at once,
yeah.
and then maybe they can make that million like 900,000 things at once,
Mm.
and just there to help them out because it's
So
they're
would
not
it
trained on this.
would it be correct to say that maybe you kind of enforce the IEP? Because like in my role as a mental health counselor, like you said, okay, the teacher has their role and things that they have to do, but if it doesn't so much match up with what I have to do on we had ISPs, then I've got to find a way to enforce that ISP to make sure that my client is getting exactly what they need regardless. So would you say that that's kind of your role is making sure that your kid and whatever the IEP says, they get that as much as you can possibly make that happen?
I like that wording better.
Yeah.
I don't like enforcing it. It's just a personal thing.
Uh,
Enforcing me sounds like I'm holding them at gunpoint, which I'm not, because honestly, my co-teachers, Megan Robertson, Emily Price, and Megan Driscoll are fantastic. I absolutely love what I'm doing. I very rarely have to be like, hey, this is in their IEP. We have to do it.
okay.
But basically, there are some times where I'm like that, like, hey, this is here.
Yeah.
This student struggles, which I think at times is helpful to have that advocate for those kids where it's just like, you know, the kids get called lazy every once in a while, which like,
Mm,
but I can kind of be the one that's like, yeah, but their executive functioning is low. They're not lazy. They're just struggling to find what task to do. So it's like I said, it's less enforcing, more advocating for the need, like the individual needs each student has.
that's a good word.
That's that's my principals talking.
Yeah.
We are the champion for the kids,
Uh,
and we are there to be there for them. And then also something I can do is like provide insight. Like we have this week, we have a student that's like, we realized we were kind of like, I don't want to say coddling. We were like giving almost too much support. And then we pulled back a bit. And then my co-teacher today went like, we can't do what we're currently doing. And so now I'm like, I'm going to think for a couple of days and like how we can adjust it to help him out. So it's kind
mm,
of even once I do enforce the IEP, then it's like, well, how do we manage a classroom with a student that like is having a hard time paying attention, needs someone there like to walk them through step by step by step by step. It's like, do we walk them step by step by step, or do we start like doing not? And so there's a lot of roles, and I'm rambling. I'm sorry. It's
No, no, you're good.
you
You're good. It's
caught me in
making
the
sense.
you caught me in the middle of the week, in the middle of the IEP season. So like I think I'm
Busy,
gonna go
huh?
take a nap. Once this is over, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go take a really nice nap and then go to bed. It's gonna be a good evening. But yeah, so I guess like if enforce the IEP, you simply mean to just I make sure it's being upheld, and um I advocate for my kids, and I
Mhm.
just make sure that they know I'm there for them. And then even if they don't have services, that my students know I'm there for them too. Because like in that room, I'm not a sped teacher, I'm a math teacher.
Mhm.
Like that's my job to them. And if they know I'm a sped teacher, then I've done something wrong, if that makes any sense.
I got you. So then would it be sufficient to say that most of your kids are not in just a sped classroom? Like, are they kind of they're in the regular classrooms and then you just
Yeah.
provide service to them throughout the day?
So my licensure is going to be something called general education.
Mm,
So that there's two main forms of sped in America in the public school. Um, and by two main, I don't know a ton of the other side. So if anyone in the chat does, please call me out on it. Like I said, I'm new and I've really only done general ed. So what general ed is we're using the inclusive model of teaching where we have students who have disabilities or learn or physical disabilities in the main general classroom. We base this off something called LRE, or the least restrictive environment. So basically, I teach in quote unquote the least restrictive environment of a general education classroom or a SPED classroom. All a SPED classroom is I'm SPED, I'm licensed to give it. We have kids in a room with me, and I have a math class. We're doing math 180 that can technically be considered SPED because I'm in there, even though
mm.
it's not a SPED type class, but blah, 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 yada, yada. Actually, I'm not even sure what I said was true. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Well, we just started that class like 2 days ago. So who knows? But like, so for like, I have some students that have direct reading. So that goes into the next restrictive environment is a SPED classroom. This student's reading ability is hindered to a point that they need direct one-on-one support, and a large classroom is not something that'll be productive to them.
Yeah.
So we're still in the general ed side of things. This is where my licensure. The other side is adaptive. So that's more of our low incident autism, um, physical impairments to a point, Tourette's, and all of those. I wish I knew more about that one, but it's not something I'm currently studying. So I'm not very knowledgeable, but that is essentially the regular classroom is not something that will be productive to the students. Or I know some people will say it's like, oh, they're distracting to their peers, and that's like not even that's like a factor amongst a bazillion that goes into putting a student in this environment, because essentially that means that like if someone is in an adaptive classroom, the general curriculum in the general classroom is not going to be productive for them.
Mm,
Um, someone who's it'd be like putting someone who's nonverbal in a choir class.
yeah.
Yes, they're good at music. Yes, this is a skill set they have and they should develop, but they're not able to. And I think that's something that it's a hard decision to say someone has to be there. It is very difficult. And like I was working with a student like the past like a couple years ago that I could have sworn was going to go in here, and we tweaked like one thing and it like all worked out. And it's sometimes like it's so there's stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of a broad view of that. And then if
Yeah.
they need to go more past that, we'll look into like private schools, like hospitalization, stuff like that.
Hmm.
But it all just depends upon what the student needs and what's going to help them benefit most from public schooling and education. It's also important to remember that any service that we provide is free.
Okay,
Um,
that's good.
that's a big thing. That's a lot of those adaptive sides why it's beneficial. So like let's say for example, God forbid someone is on dialysis at like age 12.
Yeah.
If it goes in the IEP, like the student will receive treatment for dialysis. I don't even know if that's how dialysis works. I just know my grandma had it and it was really nasty. And someone has to like empty a bag every day. The
Hmm.
school would have to hire somebody to do it, and the parent never pays out of pocket between 7:30 and 3.
Hmm.
So that's something that like So while we're providing that stuff, if it goes in there, we're going to take care of it. There's nothing I've had to do this year, but like a co-teacher of mine had a couple years ago had something that like they had seizures. And so like she had to get training for it, but like that training didn't cost her anything. And it also didn't cost the parents anything if like there was something that like medical happened at school while we're doing stuff like that, as long as it's covered like in the IEP. Like if they got hurt or injured in like PE and they have an IEP, it's like, sorry, it's not covered because it's not directly mentioned. But again, like if it's an injury to a point that we need to hire somebody or someone needs to provide it, it won't cost them for that.
Mhm. So what I'm hearing, it really sounds like your school is on top of it and making sure that really all your students have exactly what they need, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's your first year, but are there any challenges that you faced as a sped teacher in your first year?
Well, my first year is knowing what the heck to do. Second, it's COVID, so it's knowing what the heck to do. But that's just the honest answer.
Mhm.
But I guess like direct first year things, knowing how to do a meeting was really tricky. Knowing how to communicate with parents and knowing how to communicate with co-teachers. I've had a couple of calls to the office about collaboration with co-teachers
Mhm.
because like it's very easy to feel like the guy that walks in with a big stick and says, "We're gonna teach this way," and like I think I did that for like a day. And Dom, you know me from college. I'm a pretty arrogant person. So me personally,
Not that
it's
bad.
been a it's I yeah yeah. I'm fine saying that. Like it's me as a person. It's interesting. I'm having to use like character traits that aren't like I was going to be a band director. Like that's what I was trained to be for a bit. Or like as a band director, you're like the person. Like I
Right.
can walk in there and be like, all right, we're starting a kazoo ensemble. Let's go.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna play kazoo, and that's just how it's gonna be. And like I can make those decisions. That's like not anywhere near my role as a sped teacher. Like I cannot make a decision without someone else approving it. Um, which is interesting. So learning that humility with my background was very interesting. Something I'm still learning, but I think also just the sheer amount of stuff I have to do. Like I've had 3 IEP meetings this month. I have another one Friday and two more in 2 weeks, and then another one at the end of the month. Um, like to get one started, I have to do like so many things, send out letters, do all this stuff. And if at any point I don't do any part of that process, I'm in trouble. Um, from little things, just like I get a little reprimand from my principal till we could be taken to court.
Mhm.
So having that dauntiness of like, okay, I'm gonna write my first IEP. This is scary, and then also like acknowledging how big a deal some of these things are. Like when we got back from Christmas break, I had to turn around and write 2 IEPs pretty quickly. Like I planned over Christmas, I started getting the stuff set up, I had all the data in, and before Christmas, I remember my principal talking like to my department head, excuse me. And he went, "Yeah, oh no, we need to give you time, Mr. Keller, to write this." I'm like, "It's not that big a deal. Like, this shouldn't take too long." And they both looked at me like, "Went, you're gonna want this time. You're gonna want as much time of him as possible." I'm like, "Okay." Like, it's just filling some boxes. I get that it's legal, but like, what's the big deal? And I get into my first one, it's just like, holy crap! Like, there's so much to do, and there's so much data to read on, and then like recognizing, like talking to my principal, being like, "Well, what if we did this?" And it's like, "Okay, cool, put it in there." I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" It's like, if you think your student needs services, you are the one that can suggest that.
Mhm.
You are the end all be all for some of these suggestions. And I'm like, "You mean if I think a kid needs this, I can just give it to him?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And if the team agrees to do it, we'll do it. And so it's one of those. I'm like, "Oh, so I'm like the idea guy," and it's just been fun and interesting learning like what my role is. So if like
Yeah.
the first few, I don't want to say they're cut and dry to make them like discredit them. It's like they didn't need anything. It was just more of a we really knew what they needed, and I suggested some stuff that was like in my mind fairly obvious, um, like in a way what I needed to do, but like no one had thought of it, and so it's just I don't know. When I was a para, I remember saying like I cannot wait to write some IEPs, and like they stress the hell out of me now, but
Yeah.
like in such a good way, because at the end of the day, there is a student with a specific struggle and a individual area that like they mentally and cognitively are weaker than their peers. They're not dumb, they're not stupid, they just need some more assistance, and I get to be the person to find the things to best help them.
Mm.
Like that's my role, and then I get to become the expert on that student. Like I got one kid that like they go like teachers go through me to find stuff out. And it's not like a like, oh, I'm this big bad guy. It's like, no, I spend a lot of time with him. I work with him. I try different things. So they know that like I'm his biggest advocate. They'll come to me, it's like, yo, you need to get him to do this. I'm like, okay, awesome. I'll email his parents, I'll get him on it. Like, can you send one too? It's like, yeah. So all of a sudden we have this like unified front. So
Mm.
I guess the challenge, like to go back to which I kind of went elsewhere. I apologize for that.
No, you're
The
good.
challenge, the challenge to me is just like all I have to do,
Yeah.
because it's writing IEPs, it's talking to adults that like is not something they teach you in college of how to like they'll like give you collaboration stuff, but they're not like, yo, if you're bad, if your coworkers, you're gonna get fired. Because like they don't care how good of a teacher you are. If your coworkers hate you, you're gone.
Mm.
Because like why are you gonna go work in a building with people who can't stand you because they don't trust to work with you?
Right.
And like that's tricky. And then like communicating with parents, like I've had my principals, God bless them, and my department chair proofread so many emails that like I got a parent that's not happy. I want to say this in response. And then like even then, like having people tell me like you can ask the parent if they stop medicating their kids. I'm like, but I'm not their case manager. It's like it doesn't matter, you're a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Students acting up in if the students acting up in class and you notice something changed, you can ask them. Also, you can challenge them to make sure their kids are working. Yes, they're working two jobs and stuff like that, but at the same time, their kids are up to 4 a.m. playing video games all the time. You can talk to them about that.
Mm.
Now they've said like I can't just call somebody out because again, I'm not a parent. I don't get their world, but like it's interesting like the responsibility I have. And I think that's like the scariest part that like I don't want to mess something up for some kid. Like I'm always like I'm like second guessing myself like every other day right now. But like as the days go on, I have such a really good support team in Altivist that like I feel more confident like by the day.
Yeah.
Um of like, oh, this is what teaching is. Oh, this is what I do. Oh, that thing I learned is wrong. I need to do this instead. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
It's, what I have to do is honestly the scariest part.
It would
But
be
it's
the
also the
parents.
best.
Parents for me. I really feel like college education program should have a class just on talking to parents.
Just
Cause
give me a baptism by fire is honestly the greatest thing you need because like that literally
that
tells
is
you if you're gonna
true.
teach. That tells you if you're gonna teach or not.
Mm.
Mike Straw, the band director at Rustburg, was the greatest mentor I had on that. I have a foot-shaped mouth, and I did some stuff with the marching band that got me definitely in some trouble. And I had a student that like I have never had a kid or a human being hate me more than this student hated me. That's at least the impression I got from him.
Hmm.
And because we rubbed each other the wrong way. Like I will admit I didn't. He was a high schooler, so that's a different relationship. Like there's been some time, and also bands at times is a more personal relationship with student. There are some times he pushed my buttons to the point I started raising my voice at him, which I'm not happy about. And
Hmm.
there are some times when I call him to do something, he raised his voice back at me. And like we were going at each like not like fighting at each other, like stuff like that. But like when we started, we were doing I still can't believe we pulled this one off. We were doing a civil rights show one year, and I'm a more liberal person, and I like made a Donald Trump joke. And the area I'm in, a couple kids couldn't set like like young middle schoolers couldn't separate that. Like, how can you not be Republican and be Christian? And
Yeah.
for those that don't know, Domino into Liberty and has a very big influence on the area that we live in. At least I live in currently. And so that's like that political side of Christianity sucks. And I let a political moment slip where I wasn't making fun of anybody, calling something stupid. I just like made a Donald Trump joke about something. And then that parent was not happy with me, but Mike made me go apologize. Like I
Mm.
like the year before, he was kind of like being my shield for me. I was his staff, but then like he knew I wanted to be a band director, knew I wanted his job, knew I was going to be a teacher someday. And he went, all right, here's how you apologize. And he broke it down for me. And that parent, one of my best friends, like while I was there, it was one of those situations where they're like, I clarified myself. I owned up to clearly the parts where I messed up. Cause like it's, it's teaching. It's, you're going to mess up with kids. Any teacher that's like, oh, I've never raised my voice, I've never done blah blah. It's like, you're lying. Like
Yeah.
you're human, you messed up, you need to like apologize. But like that apology was like, I've had principals that are kind of surprised at how calm I can kind of keep waters from angry parents at times. Not because I think I'm good at it, but just because I had a real world experience of Mike being like, "You see that parent over there?" I'm like, yeah. Remember when he said this? Oh yeah, I did say that. Go fix it. You need to learn
Uh-huh.
how to do this. And I'm like, okay. And so they really don't teach you that, because like they can teach like, when a parent gets angry, you just have to say I'm sorry first and then do blank. And you know where that doesn't actually help. I've tried to apologize the way the textbooks say it, and I learned more working from Papa John's how to apologize to an angry person
Uh-huh.
than I have from some textbooks on how to work with like an angry parent. Because even then, like the way we describe parents, like they're not angry, they're protective.
Right.
Like that's a big difference. Like, Dom, you got kids. I don't have kids. So like looking at someone and saying like, oh, they don't sleep, they're lazy, and then you're like, dude, because I'm working like so many jobs, whatever, like they're taking care of their siblings for me because right now we can't afford rent, so I have to do this.
Yeah.
So they're up all night because they're doing blank. Or we get some upper high schoolers like they have a kid, and so like we see a kid sleeping, we see a kid doing this, cutting up, blah blah blah, or like, and then I have the audacity to be like, they just don't care about learning. It's something I really try not to do, and I really try and pick my vocabulary on students very specifically, because like if a parent heard me call their kid lazy, what if they're not just lazy? What if they're work avoiding because they don't know how to read and they're embarrassed to act up? What
Mm.
if they are learning that they have ADHD? They don't know what that means. They can't focus, so they get embarrassed. So they act up and start like making noises and being the class clown and stuff like that. Like that's where I love my job of like, I see a kid not performing at level, whatever the heck that stupid like term means. My job is to find out why. And or I am part of the process to find out why. So I'm not the diagnosis. I don't diagnose. That's the psychiatrist's
Mm.
job. So I do want to clarify, but like I like that, like, you struggle with this. Let's find out why. Let's give you the best help you can. So it's one of those, it's interesting
Yeah.
because the way we describe kids, and if we can talk race in there and stuff like that. I know like a lot of my friends talk like when you have females going to the doctor, they get pushed away a lot for like chest pain. It's like, oh, you're just bloated. Here, take this. It's like, oh, she's having a freaking heart attack. Where we look at students of IEPs, it's predominantly males.
Hmm.
So it's like, why are we? Is that just because females don't get diagnosed as much as males, or is it because we don't diagnose females as much as males? And then we have like, oh, why are this predominantly white area that's like 85% white? Why is the SPED program 65% black? It's like, this is an interesting statistic. And
Yeah.
oh, the school's percentage is 60% female, 40% male, 80% male in SPED.
Mm.
And so looking at stuff like that, where just how we describe students can like affect and do stuff like that, where, it's like a black student's raising their voice. Oh, there must be defiant or obstinate, or whatever. It's like, no, they just come from a loud household.
Mm.
Their parents are just loud people, so they just are loud individuals. Is there
Mm.
something wrong? No. So they're not shouting at you, they're just doing this. Oh, that student that has just been sitting there staring at his paper, he's not lazy, he's got poor executive functioning. Which, for our audience that doesn't know what executive functioning is like, I can't sit still. And part of it is like, I have these things I'm playing with right now. They're not to help me focus, they're just that. And I am bad at keeping lists. And so I don't have a good internal calendar or set of time. That's an executive functioning skill where like I actually have to put in, I guess, self accommodations for myself to keep myself organized. Because if I don't do anything, I literally will sit there and not do anything until someone tells me to do something. Like, I'm so bad at finding work that if I don't plan out my day, I won't do anything.
Mm.
So my executive function skills are terrible. So a kid that is all of a sudden writing their name 5 times because they didn't want to spell it wrong, they're not like work avoiding. They just are struggling to find out what to do. So and if I tell a parent they're lazy because it's their mom, could just fire back, one, with a lawsuit, which is like the bad part. And
Yeah.
two, like, what happens if the parents can't read and they don't know how to teach their kid how to read? Like there's so many factors and things that are just not considered at times by like, and I also, I hope I'm not saying this, not all gen ed teachers are like that. This is an old stigma, and we are a lot better in this world, but
Mhm.
it's still one of those, it's a human mistake, also since they don't specialize in this stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
honestly, college is a pretty crap job of teaching sped
Mhm.
to non-sped teachers. I had Nicole Trevel as my resource, and honestly, I learned more about sped from her than I did any class because she was in sped classes where I had her teach me sped things because I wanted to not leave those students out. Because all Dom and I had to do at Liberty, um, at least for our first few classes, was learn different learning styles. And then
Yeah.
our IEPs, we had a sped section that said ED, ADHD, and autism, and that's all it said.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, I remember those because I had to, like, and they also didn't tell us what to do for. It's like if I have a student has autism, I'll let them have breaks. Student has like ADHD, I'll let them have breaks. A plus, you considered your students as special needs. I'm like, did I?
Wow. Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah, that's
There's some
don't
there
scratch the
and there
surface.
yeah, because it's so garbage because like it's honestly it's so easy teaching students with ADHD.
Mhm.
Like it's so easy working with students like stuff like this. Yeah, there's frustrating days that you want to like throw something they throw at you back at them,
Mm.
but like, which you can't do by the way. Never tried, never will, but I've heard of some people trying it and they got a lot of trouble. But like it's so easy at times to me, and I think that's why I'm in the job because like it's fun to me.
Mhm.
Like I like working with behavior. Like when kids are acting up, like those are my like my favorite things of just like a student's being an obstinate or like being insubordinate. Like I love those kids. I
Mm.
don't know why. But some people they're not built for that.
Yeah.
Like they're really like their order and their organization. I like my order and organization, but I'm fine at being blown up. And
Yeah.
that's you know, it's it's an interesting job and like how I got to it. Um yeah. And again, I'll apologize for all the rambling. Hope not
You
being too
no,
long winded on these
you're not
things.
rambling. There's so much information that we're getting, so you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. But I kind of wanted to get to something that you brought up before we started the show. Because
Okay.
we've been kind of talking about stigmas a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
So kind of looking at the community and misconceptions that go into it. Because you said something earlier, this kid's not dumb or stupid. This kid just has this. There's so many misconceptions that I feel like a lot of us have from the outside looking in, especially growing up, being in school, knowing, okay, those are the sped kids over there, it's a sped class, and what we see from the outside, but not actually knowing the truth. So from what you know, what are some misconceptions that people kind of have about this community, and what do we need to do to get past those things?
So the only way I can think to set this up is since I know your audience is like mostly black, and I hope I don't go like inappropriate with the way I asked. It's just because a lot of the like isms, like rudeness of one community to another can be the same. Essentially, at times, the way we treat people with disabilities is, and like through intersectionality and stuff, we can see it as kind of like we have like individuals who are like mixed race, and I think like they can probably relate to this a bit, where it's like I at times, and for the record, I'm not mixed. I'm just using it as an example, where it's like I interviewed someone for my podcast that is mixed, and they very much say like I'm not black enough for black communities, I'm not white enough for white communities.
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
ADHD, but I don't have it nearly as severe as some other people.
Mhm.
So there's times I could be talking to somebody and they have no idea what I'm saying. And then there's times I can go somewhere else. So it's kind of like, and then I get told to act normal or kind of
Mhm.
like, back to that student who's mixed. It's just like, you by like a racist teacher, something like you can't act that black around here or something. And like someone tells them, it's like, we don't do this, we don't do that.
Mhm.
And so you have all these people pulling in different directions. They're like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And I'm just like, I just have to focus.
Yeah.
And everyone's telling me what to do. I don't know how to do that. I don't think I can do that. I'm not able to do that. Why bother trying to do that?
Mhm.
And it's one of the things I really enjoy, that like it always blows my mind when people say intersectionality is racist or something, because like I've been able to learn a lot about other cultures from learning about myself in that example, because like, and the way that works in SPED is like a student who has autism isn't any less normal than you or me,
Mhm.
because the idea of like disability is a social construct. It's the same as race and gender being a social construct. It's just simply we see someone deviating from the norm.
Mhm.
Um, where like, because I guess that my question for you, Dom, is like, what is considered normal?
That's a good question. And
Because
I
like
really feel
normal
like
for, yeah,
normal is just it's just neurotypical is the best way I can say it. If you're not neurotypical, if you're not, because my wife likes to say that we're all on the spectrum somewhere. And so I feel like if this is the spectrum, if you're here, then this would be considered normal. Anyone that's an
yeah,
outlier in any direction, we would say you're not normal. There's something wrong with
yeah.
you. You need some kind of help or something like that.
And where it makes it challenging at times for that, and like where I feel like at times other communities get mislabeled as having
Mm,
special needs, is like communication. So Dom and I have been friends for years. There's a lot of verbiage of him that's clearly African American. Mine is clearly white. Like I will legitimately, unironically say like G Willikers every once in a while. Like that is not something I many people do, but like I come from a fairly like middle class white, and that's like a thing. And
mm,
Dom has some isms that he does as well. And like in the black community, I remember reading about from my language development class, like the word ask versus ax,
mm.
like using that in a sentence. Which one's proper?
Well, the
The
norm
answer
would
is
say ask,
yeah. But
right?
then, like, if so, let's say I have a student that keeps saying axe and I don't know anything about another culture.
Mm,
And so I'm like, well, they're not talking right. So they must have a speech impediment because they don't know how to say the word ask. They can't form it. They keep saying the word axe.
mm,
Or like I'm Southern. And if I start talking in a Southern accent, people start thinking I'm stupid.
yeah.
But like Dom and I know some pretty intelligent Southern boys that just have an accent and people think they're dumb. But then you listen to what they're saying, like, oh crap, that's it. That's how we treat disabilities, which we have no idea what they are because we don't know what normal is.
Mm,
We'll put me next to someone with a British accent, and your mind says the British accent's smarter.
yeah.
But is it? We'll put someone with autism that struggles to communicate next to someone who can communicate normally and say, oh, that problem's weird and has a problem. That's like not it at all. And that's like where I like that SPED comes in there. It's like we definitely need to get some people to the norm of like grades and stuff like that. And we want to help
Mm,
people function in society. But I think that my issue with the stigma at times is like we don't know what it is, or we romanticize it. Self-diagnosing is a big issue right now.
mm,
Of like I see a lot of friends of mine that like they'll use ADD as an excuse. It's like, oh, I have undiagnosed ADHD. That's why I can't remember things. So I'm like, hi, yeah. Have you ever like cried yourself to sleep because you can't focus for 4 hours?
mm,
Or are you just playing video games? It's like I don't want to like make mine sound worse than yours, because even then, what if they are undiagnosed ADHD and they don't know any better? And they only use it as a defense mechanism. So even then, like this is a very rounded, very convoluted conversation, because it's a very rounded, convoluted conversation. There is no normal. There is no things. What would be considered a disability in America, or better yet, in Virginia, is a different as a disability over in Washington.
yeah.
Because we got some of the smartest people I've ever met my entire life, or some of the dumbest Southerners to other people's mindsets.
Mm,
Like I'm a constant defender of the local redneck, because like some of the deepest philosophical thinkers ever, but like white liberal media likes to make them sound like dumb idiots.
yeah.
They love making fun of people like that, making fun of like, oh, I think their IQ is messed up. That's why they sound that way. It's like, no, their mom talks that way. Their dad talks that way. They got a perfect score in the SAT and the ACT. It's like, how did this redneck do it? How did this Southern white boy get all these blah, blah, blah? It's like, they're just smart. They just don't sound like it. And then why is like, we have all these CEOs that sound proper and smart and they're geniuses, but they
yeah.
bankrupt their company multiple times. It's like, it's such a stupid thing that we compare people like that, because
Mm,
we're causing so many other issues and we're writing kids off. Because like, I remember from the podcast I was on today, it's like a student, I can't remember his name, the guy that like failed out of stuff. It's like he was struggling until we got a teacher that made something click,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And then once that teacher made something click, he had some good times for a bit, but then the teacher stopped making it click, so he dropped off.
Mm.
And we need more teachers that think that way, and SPED has to be geared that way.
Yeah.
SPED cannot be from the mindset of our kids are too stupid to function in this. We have to make them do that. SPED has to be of a, this person is lacking specific skills, and we're going to go strengthen those specific skills. That's why like my IEP goals can't just be things my student doesn't need.
Mm.
I have a student that has an expressive vocabulary disorder and like it's like a speech impediment. So I've written goals specifically for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine if I gave that individual student that needs speech therapy stuff things about how to see from farther away,
Yeah.
or like how to like do better at like write a report on history. Like if like they need to say something and I say like all their goals are like student will write down blank. Oh, they're not gonna be able to speak anyway, so I have to teach them how to write to accommodate.
Mm.
No, I need to go help them out do this thing that we as society say is something they need to do to function correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some things, you know, it's like, how do we communicate? And
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing from Doctor Who I was watching recently, it's like the emoji is going to last forever, you know? So it's like, oh, I guess like we're going to have to learn how to text emoji, and someone that can't get it to have like an emoji disability or something, which if that's the case, that'll be a thing. But like, it's, I don't know. That's like my biggest problem with it. It's like, we guess, we WebMD, we misdiagnose, you know, we have the wrong information, then we think like we know what it is. And then, because like, I don't know anything about ADHD. I just know what I have with ADHD and I don't know how to help me. And then we like, just, I don't know. It always frustrates me at times, like not in an angry throw things way, but just kind of like how pure the intention is, but bad the execution is. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. And that's a good way of putting it. Because everything is not malicious all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah.
No, it's I guess since I was talking race earlier, it's just like it's why like I think it's so hard for some people to see that the fact that they're saying racist things is like they're not wearing hoods in the KKK.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't think I was being racist because like I'm not burning crosses, I'm not hanging people.
Right.
The same thing can be said here for being ableist. It's like I didn't think I was being detrimental to that person with autism. And then you have the reverse side of it. It's like you can't call someone autistic, but you know who doesn't care if you call them autistic? Most people I've met who have autism. I choose to say like on the spectrum because that's just a safe place for me to be. I'm not going to like make people do that. I'm just going to say like this student is on the spectrum or they have ASD. But like people who have it sometimes don't care because it's a part of their identity.
Yeah.
So why would I try to like hide something that of them? And so like it's interesting how like the reverse of it is like malicious intent by like not knowing enough, to the reverse side of it of just like, which is the very caustic white liberal side of which honestly I don't know, it can be this like white liberal mindset of like maybe it's like neoliberalism of like we can't offend everybody, everybody's special, everyone has issues, no one can say anything detrimental to someone else. And so it's like these two things that like is why I like politics so much, because the conservative mindset is just there is a system and a way that worked, and then the liberal mindset is just something different. And I think SPED has to be in the middle because like, you know, I can't just do something new with a student that I haven't researched and done myself. But at the same time, if we know something works, why would we try something different?
Yeah. It makes
You know?
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, the reverse to make SPED complicated, I can't just do the same thing every time because it works. Because that one kid will come and throw a wrench in the train because the human brain is so complex. So it's more complicated than people realizes, but it's also sometimes it's more simple. And that's like the most frustrating thing my principals tell me when I'm like, is there like a one size fits all for this? They're like, nope, case by case basis. And you know what? That's all SPED is.
Yeah.
And that's what being an advocate for these individuals is looking at them first, then their disability, then what they need to do. Because if we're just looking at a student of autism, I'm missing the fact that the student doesn't like loud noises. Oh, I'm going to tangent. I was watching something on Jose Canseco the other day. and he like got accused of having like he was on a ton of steroids for those who don't know, and he got angry one day. Um, I'm not going to defend him. He beat his wife in a situation, and this is bad. But the funny thing was the way he responded, saying like, "If I'm on steroids and you make every single time I'm angry due to my steroids, then how can I actually be when am I angry not for my steroids?"
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like we see someone do something angry, they're on steroids. Oh, it must be roid rage. Well, I get angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why am I angry?
Yeah.
I don't take steroids. And then you go to someone with autism, it's like, oh, that kid doesn't like loud noises because they have autism. No, they just don't like loud noises. It doesn't make them freak out. It doesn't make them have a meltdown. It doesn't make them have anything like this. They just don't like loud noises because they're an introverted person
Mm-hmm.
that happens to have autism. Like there's so many factors that people just stupidly and ignorantly ignore, or as we said, have the best intentions to like, oh, this person does this and does that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got me on a rant in a good way.
No, it was good because you said something that was amazing, I think. See the person,
Ooh, interesting.
then see the disability, and then see what they need from it. And I feel like that's something that we miss a lot, especially with misconceptions, is we don't see the person. We look at someone and we see that they don't fit into the norm, and then that's our view of them from that point forward.
Yeah,
So yeah, we
that's
see the
absolutely
person. Yeah.
one of the first things. Wasn't my first class. It was, I think, my collaboration class. So like the second class I took in grad school, I had 1 week's worth of assignment was just on people first language.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't know what that is, that's simply saying like, my name is David. I have ADHD. If I was to write a report that's like student who has ADHD, I'm putting person first and then what it is. As I mentioned earlier, individual with autism has just been kind of like the norm right now, because before we'd say like, oh, that person is like that autistic person,
Mm-hmm.
which is okay. The first thing I think about is autism and then a person, when like I will forget the fact that like there's an individual there that can do blah blah blah. So it's something that like at least um my grad school has really instilled to me. It's like that is a person first and then a disability.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, what if their issues aren't actually disability related? They're just them related.
Yeah.
That happens to have a disability, because there's two different ways to help that out. And I don't know which one to pick until I get to know the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, kid's not doing anything. Kid's never working for me. Oh, the kid's having custody changes at 2 a.m. every night.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's asleep in all my classes, because he's getting switched between parents all the time. What do I do about that? I have no idea. I don't have to deal with stuff like that. So thankfully, that's not something I've had to think about, but it's something I'm going to have to someday.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say that kid has ADHD and poor executive functioning skills. Now I have to tell about which one's lack of sleep, lack of meds, and the stability taking over.
Mm-hmm.
Then also considering maybe the kid's just being lazy today.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is just that simple, but sometimes it's that complicated. And that's where like I feel like a detective, which is like why I love my job. I have to like know what's going on, because it's the person.
Yeah. That's, like I said, that was profound. And I think that's what the take home point is we need to look at people as people before we try to look at them as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that. And thank you for being with us tonight and sharing everything you
Anytime.
shared. Yeah, we definitely learned a lot, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
was really hoping I'd actually be profound.
You got it. You did it.
Yeah. And I guess for like my final words, because I know how podcasts work. Dom's been
Yeah.
on my podcast a couple times, so we trade podcast host notes every once in a while. So I had a feeling my final words toss was going to come up. So I'll just steal your
You got
thunder a
it.
little bit.
You got it.
Please never stop having the right heart, even if you mess up in sped. The amount of times I've had a principal say, you can't tell that to a parent. You shouldn't do that for students. You really need to think about this. it's very easy at times in teaching, and it's very, very, very easy to get burnt out from the fact that like you got into it because you love kids and you're naturally good at it.
Hmm.
I don't know if I ever told you this, Dom. I used to tutor math as a junior in high school to seniors in high school.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
So I've been teaching math for a while, but I gave an example in class yesterday and it bombed. It bombed hard. My co-teacher and I laughed about it. I went like, okay, you and I talked about it. We thought that would work and that didn't. That does not make me a bad person.
Hmm.
And that does not make my love of teaching change anymore. Too often, especially in special education, because we want to help people out who struggled, or like me, either didn't have the resources from being in private school, or I had great resources in my parents and a couple select teachers that stood up for me from some pretty crappy teachers. Keep the heart and get the training. And while you're getting that, something I've been really inspired by my administration, while you're getting the training, both it's weird. It's sped. It's a double-edged like oxymoron. Be confident to take the lead with what you know, but also know when to be humble and
Hmm.
when to sit back and watch somebody do something better than you.
Hmm.
Because your gen ed teachers are going to be better sped teachers some days, and it's going to surprise you, and you cannot take it personal. You're going to be tired and exhausted, and you're going to like not write as much data points as you want to one day because you're tired, and that's okay. Do what you can to stay at 100% as long as you can and rest as much as you can, and don't take your mistakes personally the first few years, because sped teachers and gen ed teachers don't mix in college, and it sucks.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we don't know how to talk to each other. And so those first few years are so crucial. So like if your first few years are teaching and it's terrible, it's because you're learning. Please stick with it. We're having a teacher shortage right now. It's terrible. And it's only terrible because like we want it to be terrible. We can change this around and beat the future we want to do. We can push up top. I know I talk funding a lot, and I like that Lakeisha made a point that funding only does part of it as long as the people in the building are good. If we felt like making education to be what we want it to be, we could. But a lot of times we hold ourselves back because it's a lot of the old guard still there, and there's not many people my age teaching.
Hmm.
And there's not many people my age teaching for long periods of time because we get tired and burnt out, and we feel like, and especially as Christians, we hit that first struggle and it's not my calling anymore.
Yeah.
It's still is your calling. Just accept the fact that you suck at your job your first 2 years. It's going to be okay. That's the best advice I got. I had someone sit me down and tell me that it's like, David, you're new. Stop trying to be a veteran. I'm like, but I don't want to be bad at my job. They're like, you're going to be bad at your job. I'm like, okay, fine. Can I be bad at my job yesterday? It's like, no, you're bad at your job now. Like it's, and find a good school. Alta Vista Combined is fantastic. Kristen John is one of the greatest principals I've ever had. I went from a great one to Suzette Pierman over at Rustburg, working first to sped one. Leo Dutil is a fantastic department chair. Like I love everything about the building I'm in, and all the struggles I have. They're just great. And that's for anyone going into sped. Please, we need more of you. We need new ideas, we need new approaches. And like I said, please do not get tired, and tired as in like tired and angry, because I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep right after this. I'm gonna wake up in 2 hours and write an IEP and then go to bed. But you got this. God's got your back. Your team's got your back, and please keep going because these kids are awesome.
Bet. Well, thank you. Thank you again. Everybody watching, thank you for coming, stopping by, hanging out with us for a little bit. Stay tuned. We have more coming at you. And of course, we're back Saturday. So go ahead, follow us on all platforms and get ready for more. And with that, y'all be easy and good night.